How you doing, guys? Big Mech Dance School here today, back once again with another Conquest video for you. Today we're going to be taking a look through the pages of issue 77. But before we delve into the pages of this week's issue of Conquest, I just want to remind you, if you'd like to support the channel and help these videos continue and the Mortal Realms videos continue into the future, then you can do so by following the link below to my Patreon. I'll pop one in the description. I'll try and remember to pin one as a comment as well. And yeah, you can support the channel there. There's 3 different levels you can support the channel at. One is a $1 level, one is a $5 level, and one is a $12 level, with various rewards that are explained on the Patreon website. It's basically patreon.com/BigMechDanceSchool, I think. But there's a link anyway, so just follow that. Don't try and type that into your browser. Might be wrong. Anyway, back to the video. So what do we get with this week's issue of Conquest? Well, we get our 3rd sprue of Repulsor, and this enables us to complete the building of the vehicle, of the tank. However, we don't have a base for it yet, so as suspected, as was previously suspected, I can't remember what post I saw it on, but I have seen a post somewhere saying the last so-called Repulsor issue 78, will contain just the base. Now I'm hoping, although I'm not an Ultramarines player, I'm hoping that not just the base will come in that issue, but some transfers as well. That'd be nice for the Ultramarine collectors out there. I'd be able to use some of those transfers, but not all of them, because I've painted my Marines up as Imperial Fists. But whether they'll come or not remains to be seen. We'll have to wait till next week's issue to find that out for sure. Looking at the front cover, as well as the Repulsor Tank Part 3, we're also getting Discover the Necrons and the Repulsor Paint Guide. I wonder if it's going to be as long as the build guide was last week, but we'll see when we get to those pages, I guess. Turning to the first page, we get Devastator Squads. We weren't told about this on the front cover, but it goes into great detail about what Devastator Squads are, what their battlefield role is. Their type is infantry, battlefield role, long range fire support, heavy weapons, grav cannon and grav amp, heavy bolter, las cannon, missile launcher, multi-melter, plasma cannon. There's a nice image on the first page of some Salamander Devastators by the looks of it. And flicking to the next page, we get some Dark Angels Devastators there. They offer flexible fire support. The weapons wielded by Devastators are amongst the most powerful carried into battle by the Space Marines. Often, a squad of Devastators will use a mix of anti-infantry and anti-armor weapons, basically covering all bases. So, if they need to target a vehicle, a tank, a Predator, let's say, a Chaos Predator, of course, because they're not going to be targeting other Imperial vehicles, are they? Maybe they will. But yeah, it's covering all bases in that instance, where they've got certain weapons with high armor penetration values, certain weapons with a high rate of fire to take out lighter vehicles, but more so infantry. Yeah, so they can take things like missile launchers, las cannons. They have extra ammunition in backpacks and stuff. They can take Armorium Cherubs, which, mythos. I know you'll be watching this video. The freaky babies freak you out, but I love them, mate. Armorium Cherub is like a baby Servitor. Servitor is a lobotomized human that has been, the mind has been taken over replaced, let's say, in part, by machine. So they're just like a grunt, basically. They do some heavy lifting, heavy carrying. But an Armorium Cherub is a very specific one used by Devastators, and they are tasked with carrying ammunition and reloading weapons in this instance. They can take Signums, which is a targeting device used by Devastators, grav cannons, and heavy bolters. Onto the next page, we get Centurion Devastators. So we're not just talking about the ordinary Devastators, we're talking about the Devastators where it's a Marine inside a Marine. Centurions, you may remember, we've had, I think they're called Assault Centurions in the past, where they've got things like siege drills on their arm weapons. They're for grinding through gates, fortified positions and stuff like that. And the Centurion Devastators are basically a long-range version of those Centurions. They carry very similar weapons to the standard Devastator squads, but they carry a lot more of them. Each Centurion Devastator is like a walking tank, basically. They're like a tank that's slightly less mobile because they're not as fast moving, but they carry just as many weapons as certain tanks like Predators and stuff. They carry a weapon on each fist. A lot of the time it's a heavy bolter. They've got hurricane bolters in their chest, which give them a great high rate of fire. And yes, onto the next page, they can also take grav cannons, of course. Hurricane bolters, like I said, heavy bolters, Centurion missile launchers instead of the Centurion missile launchers instead of the hurricane bolters in the chest, if you like. Las cannons instead of the heavy bolters or the grav cannons, and they can take an omniscope as well to aid in targeting. Onto the next page, we get Space Marine Company organisation. I'm sure we've had enough Space Marine Company organisation so far. I feel like we've had all this information, or more or less all this information before. Maybe not, maybe this is just clarifying certain things that were left a bit vague in the past. And at the end of the day, it's only over 2 pages, but we're getting 2 pages taken up. It feels like filler to me is what I'm getting at. We're getting 2 pages taken up by this company organisation, which I feel like we've had enough information about Space Marine companies and how they're organised and the chapters and stuff. But, maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments below if you think we need this information. So it goes into detail about what the various companies do. So the first company is a veteran company, and it's made up of a captain, 2 lieutenants, chaplain, apothecary, ancient, dreadnoughts, transports, 10 veteran squads that include Sternguard, Vanguard, Terminators and Intercessors. And then the 2nd to 5th companies are all battle companies, which are like ready to mobilise at any given minute, any given second. They contain, similarly, a captain, 2 lieutenants, a chaplain, apothecary, ancient, dreadnoughts and transports. However, instead of 10 veteran squads, they have 6 battle line squads, which can be like your tactical marines or your Primaris intercessors. 2 close support squads, which can be your Reavers or your assault marines. 2 fire support squads, which are long range like Devastators, Centurion Devastators, those sorts of things. And then after that we get the reserve companies, which are 6 and 7 are 2 battle line reserve companies, then 8 a close support company, 9 fire support company and 10 are the scout company. The scout company also contains a lot of Vanguard marines, and there's no limit to the size of your scout company. It used to be that each chapter of Space Marines was made up of 1,000 marines, including everything in the 10th company. However, now there's no limit to the size of your scout company. Rabute Gilliman, who came up with the Codex Astartes, has decided in his infinite wisdom that they can just keep recruiting and they have a never-ending supply of marines then. But that really enables them to maintain 1,000 marines realistically just going forward, rather than certain chapters have been nearly wiped out in the past, like the Crimson Fist, for example, were nearly wiped out on Rin's World, and they have just recently been replenished by Primaris Space Marines made by Belisarius Call over the 10,000 years between the Horus Heresy and the current timeline in the 40k universe. So rather than having chapters nearly wiped out, it's better to allow them to just continually recruit, chuck loads of bodies into the scout companies, and then they've got replacements almost ready, almost like oven ready, when they need them, as and when they need them. So it works quite well, I'd say that, and it's quite a good thing to do. On to the next page, we get Necrons. Now, you may have heard me say in videos in the past, in Conquest videos in the past, that I'm not a massive fan of Necrons. And today I was trying to think why as I was reading this, but I think it's just because they don't have, for me, they don't have a lot of character, because I don't know much about their culture. Because ultimately, they've been asleep for thousands of years. They don't have much of a culture because each individual doesn't retain much of the personality they had when they were fleshy beings, for want of a better description, when they were biological beings rather than mechanical beings. But yeah, these 4 pages, or whatever it is, 4 pages, yeah, goes into a little bit of detail to explain the situation. And years and years and years ago, many thousands of years ago, the Necrons were like one of the most powerful races, or the Necrontyr rather, were one of the most powerful races in the galaxy. However, they always used to have a fight with these guys called the Old Ones. The Old Ones are the creators, many people think, are the creators of races like humanity, the Eldari, the Drukhari, just the Eldar race as a whole. Humanity, Eldar, Drukhari, Orcs, possibly Tau, but maybe not. So they've created loads of different races for various different reasons, the Old Ones. But the Necron tier used to fight the Old Ones, and they wanted to have dominance over the galaxy, so they made a deal with, they came across these star gods called the Catan, and they made a deal with the Catan to enable them to beat the Old Ones once and for all. However, the Catan, known as the Deceiver, he tricked them. He only became known as a Deceiver, I assume, after he tricked them. Otherwise, why would they trust a Catan called the Deceiver? He tricked them into basically, so that he tricked them so that the Catan could consume the souls of the Necrons here. He agreed to help them, and he did that by transferring their consciousnesses. I don't know what the right word is there. Their consciousness into machines. He transferred their consciousness into machines, but in doing that, it released their souls, and their souls were consumed by the Catan. And for years after that, whilst yes, it enabled them to defeat the Old Ones, years after that, so their consciousness was now in machines, this living metal the Necrons are made up of. And years after that, they found a way to trick the Star Gods and actually destroy the Star Gods. Not quite destroy them, they shattered them into shards. So in the Necron Codex now, what you can have is a shard of a Catan and use that on the battlefield, because they shattered them into these shards, which are like portions of their greater being, their greater whole, I guess. They're about as powerful as something like the Avatars in the Eldar lore, or the Primarchs in the lore of the Imperium. And yes, I feel like I've just gone off on a weird tangent now, but yeah, they basically got revenge on the Catan by all but destroying them, and they harness the power of the Catan now to their own means. But yeah, for years after they destroyed the Old Ones and got their revenge on the Catan, they decided to go to bed for a bit. So for thousands and thousands of years, they've been slumbering on these the worlds across the Empire that used to be theirs, the Empire of the Stars that used to be theirs, and they've remained dormant in these tomb worlds for years. And it's only the past few thousand years that these tomb worlds have started waking up en masse and mobilising and trying to kill all biological life in the galaxy once again. And then we get a showcase over the next 2 pages. I'm sure they'll have been up behind me already. Just want to touch on one particular guy there. Nemesor Zandrek. Is he dabbing or is he dabbing? He's dabbing. Onto the next page, the last page of the showcase, we have a Catan shard. And that's the Shard of the Nightbringer. Some of the Catan models are really nice, really characterful, which I feel the Necrons lack, as I've said. They just look very samey. I don't like the word samey, but a lot of the Necron models look the same. The ones I do like more are the ones that are different. So I like things like the Wraiths and the Tomb Blades and the Canoptex and stuff, which you can see on the last page on this landing pad. I like those models because they look, to me, if you were going to transfer your consciousness into a machine and you wanted to do that in order to defeat an enemy, why wouldn't you transfer your consciousness into machines like that are purpose built for war, rather than bipedal walking machines that look like the Terminator? Essentially, it doesn't make sense to me. And you have separate guns and stuff like that. It should all be one being, one giant mecha. You know, maybe with 4 legs. They could all have 4 legs instead of 2 legs, and I feel like they'd have more character there. Rather than remaining bipedal, it doesn't make sense to me. It's like the lore doesn't quite match up with the models. in my opinion. That's one of the reasons maybe I don't like them that much, but certain models do appeal to me, like I said, like the Catan and the Raids and stuff, and some of the big constructs as well. Anyway, onto the how to paint section. We get a how to paint repulsor. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages. So 8 pages, and we get to see a rare Primaris Tech Marine as well. Primaris Tech Marine is a model we don't have a separate model on foot for at the minute. However, Tech Marines pilot vehicles, and this guy sticking out the top of the repulsor is a Tech Marine. Looks like he's checking his watch there, casually checking, maybe a message has come through on his Apple Watch, and he's just casually checking it as he's firing off his Gatling cannon. But yeah, that's it's an okay paint job. I feel like they could take it to another level if they had transfers. But yeah, let's not worry too much about transfers until we see whether we actually get them or not in the next issue with the base. It'd be nice if we did, but not the end of the world, because they might teach us how to paint things like ultramarine symbols, tactical symbols, and just a step-by-step freehand guide, something like that instead. On to the next page, we get Crash Landing. The war for Corvon 2 continues to rage on. With open battles taking place across the planet, the Imperial reinforcements have arrived in force. And the air is thick with support ships and combat aircraft bristling with missiles and other deadly weapons. So, Imperial reinforcements have arrived. They want dominance in the skies. They've sent a load of Imperial vessels, not just Space Marine ones, but Valkyries, into the atmosphere to duel with the Chaos Terrors. And in doing so, there's been a Space Marine transport vehicle crash landed. And on that transport vehicle is a repulsor battle tank. Fancy that, eh? So we get to place, once we've built and painted our repulsor, we get to place it on the centre of this battlefield, this 3 battle map battlefield, as an objective. That's all it does in this battle, unfortunately. You can't fire the guns or anything, but it acts as the objective, so it's preparing us, getting us tantalisingly close to whether we'll be able to use it or not in next week's battle. Now, it doesn't have that caveat in the victory conditions or anything here, but I'd consider playing that. If you play this battle 3 times over and the Space Marine player wins 2 out of 3 times or 3 out of 3 times, then they get to use a repulsor in next week's scenario. However, if the Death Guard player wins 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 3 times, then the Space Marine player doesn't get to use a repulsor in the next few scenarios. It'd be an interesting little caveat to put in there, but it's, by no means is this the only repulsor in existence. So the Space Marines could have got their hands on a repulsor another way if they want to use a repulsor in next week's scenario. But like I said, it's just an objective marker in this week's scenario. Roll off, and starting with the winner, take a turn to place the battle mats in the layout shown above, set up the terrain in an agreed manner. The repulsor transport serves as the objective. Place the repulsor in the middle of the board. The repulsor tank cannot move or fire any of its weapons during this game. The armies, both players create a Battleforged army, maximum power rating 50. Deployment, both deploy zones are shown on the map above. Again, it's A and B in red or orange and yellow. Both players roll off. The winner can decide who deploys first. Players then alternate deploying their units, beginning with the player chosen to deploy first. The player who finishes deploying their units last takes the first turn. Ooh, the player who finishes deploying their units last takes the first turn. It's normally the player who finishes first takes first turn. I wonder why they've done that. Interesting. Victory conditions: eliminate an enemy unit, 1 victory point. The first player to eliminate an enemy unit, 1 victory point. Eliminating an enemy warlord, 1 victory point. Controlling the objective, 3 victory points. To control the objective, you need more models within 3 inches of it than the opponent. And the game lasts for 5 battle rounds, so it's a nice, simple scenario leading into next week's, hopefully, where we'll finally get to stick our repulsor on a base and use it in a mission. What are we getting in next week's Conquest? Well, we're getting a base for a repulsor. We're getting part 4 of the repulsor. I wonder, like I said, I wonder if we'll get the transfers as well. It'd be nice if we do, but if we don't, we don't. And then, issue 79, the penultimate issue of Conquest. I stuttered. The penultimate issue of Conquest comes with Magnavent walkways. So these are Sector Mechanicus terrain, basically. It's a set of walkways and stanchions for them to stand on. It gives us a nice elevated position on the battlefield that we've not had before. We've got some lightly elevated positions, but not some very highly elevated positions. These are 5 inches tall. You can't hide when there's a, let's say, I can't think of any. Basically, when there's a group of hellblasters stood on these, it's going to be very hard for the Death Guard forces to hide. Or when there's some other Death Guard heavy weapon thing on it, it's going to be hard for the Space Marine Repulsor to hide likewise. So it's going to be an important part of the battlefield when we get to it, when we get to build it and paint it and play on it. Oh, it's very exciting. Anyway, we'll leave it there for now, guys. Like I said at the start of the video, don't forget to check out the link to my Patreon below. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you on the battlefield.